Hello, hello.
This is our fourth one.
Fourth one.
Number
Yeah.
4.
That's like, wow.
Yeah.
Fourth one. I missed
Fourth
one somewhere.
Hey, wait until we get like 150
Yeah.
or 1,000. Then
Yeah.
we'll have to have a party. Definitely. Right? So we're talking about dreams.
Dreams.
People that, we have lots of dreams in our life. I mean, some people have this like one huge dream, one focus, but our lives are made up of small dreams, really.
Yeah.
Right? So yours was a family.
Yep. Always
That's
dreamed
what-
of having a family. I grew up with a good family, so a lot of extended family, things like that. And it was just really.
So did you think about that as a teenager?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably later as a teen, younger ages, there were only things in life were hunting, fishing, loving every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to borrow, a phrase
I
from
love
one of the
that
songs
song.
we play.
Yeah.
But anyway, but no, I probably towards the end of high school and stuff is like, you know what, I want to have a family and kind of started working on, looking for somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. How early was that?
Well, like I said, teenage. I don't even think I had my first like girlfriend, if you want to call her that, was maybe late middle school, but that wasn't thinking about family then. That was just thinking about having a girlfriend.
Right.
But
Well,
no, in high school, like I said, towards the end of high school is when started really saying, hey, you know what? Then when I got out of high school, I
but what
joined the
made you have
service.
that dream? Did you see your parents and say,
Oh, yeah.
I really want something like that?
Yep.
Okay.
What we had, and like I said, the extended family, we had enormous.
Well, and your
extended
parents
family.
had 2 boys and you had 2 boys. So you kind of
Yeah.
matched your family a bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and
I
that
don't know
was
if you planned that or not.
no, that wasn't planned. That was
Sonia have 2 boys.
after we wanted to have more kids, but after her second pregnancy was so difficult, and they advised against it.
So you finally found Sonia.
Yep.
So where did you guys meet?
United States Air Force.
Wow.
Yeah. She was a parachute rigger and sewed the cargo seats on the aircraft and things like that, sewed patches on uniforms, and I was security police.
Security police. And he does have some stories about that.
I
don't know if we should tell them on camera or not, but
yeah.
Some interesting little episodes that you
But it was that whole story is kind of funny, and those were kind of wild days. And actually, she was dating the guy that roomed next to our room in the barracks.
Yeah.
And it's kind of see her, and then she'd see me, and they were having issues. I'd hear them arguing and stuff, and
you're like,
And then finally,
did you like her then, and just stayed away because of this?
Yeah,
guy?
I just stayed away because
Okay.
the other guy didn't want to, not into what would you call that? I don't know, stealing somebody's girl or whatever.
Yeah, I have no idea what they call that, but other than stealing somebody's girl.
But then and the only thing I remember after they were done was she was sitting out there was a little knoll on the back of the barracks, overlooked the shelter house and stuff, and we'd kind of, airmen and sergeants and stuff, we'd congregate out there or whatever. But anyway, so she was sitting out there one day and just by herself, and a bunch of us would go up to this place and jump off this old railroad bridge into the water. And then we'd sit around and have campfires and just kind of have like parties into the night and stuff. And she was sitting out back, and I asked her, hey, would you like to go? And she said, yeah, I'll go.
Go where?
To one of those parties.
To one of the parties, okay.
Yep.
So is this while she was dating?
No, afterwards.
So this is after.
After it was over. And then...
So you moved on in.
Yeah.
Right after that guy's gone, you're moving on in. Okay, here you go. All right.
And so everybody piled in. Back in those days, this was before the illegal to ride in the back of the truck days.
Yeah.
So I had my truck, and everybody piled into that, and off we went.
Wow.
And
those were the fun days.
And what was funny about it was there was a roomie that the guy next door had,
Yeah.
that he was a friend, and I kept trying to talk to Sonia, and he kept trying to butt in and, "No, you don't wanna talk to her.
Why
No,
is
you don't
that?
want."
Did he like her? Was he trying to move in
No,
on your
no,
situation?
no, he was I
He was
think
just a talkative guy?
no, he was trying to not I think he was listening to whatever his roommate was saying, because he was like, "She's bad news, you don't want
Oh,
her."
he was protecting you.
Well, that's what he thought. I finally told him.
Yeah, I can handle myself,
Yeah.
dude.
So I finally told him, I said, "Hey," I said, "get gone, because I wanna talk to her, and if you do that again, we're gonna have issues."
Mhm.
And so he finally went off and
Mhm.
found something to do, and I got to talk to Sonia a little bit, and then we, just kinda started seeing each other regularly, and the rest is history. I met her in July, and I married her in November, so that was how fast that
Okay,
turned.
okay. Yeah. There's a little bit of piece of information in there.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's
Yeah.
that too, but
Yeah.
it was one of those things, that, like I said, I was lo
I actually think that's part of the amazing part of your testimony
Yeah,
as a Christian. And you guys married pretty quickly, right? I mean, how long did you even know each other?
July to
Yeah,
November.
exactly. And
I met her in
there was a
July,
little one involved. But how long have you been married?
37 years this
I mean,
year.
that is a testimony of two people, you know.
Yep,
I mean, you know what I'm saying, dude?
yep.
People usually don't make it,
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I wouldn't. I guess, if I were talking to somebody, I don't know if I would recommend it, but
Oh, no, no.
there are things that, when you're at a point, you're like, you just kinda know. It's like, which I think I heard you share with me, you and Bob, you kinda knew at a certain
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
and it's like,
Well, and you have
okay.
two committed people that really want it to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so tell me what kind of things, um, if somebody's out there listening who wants to get married, wants to build a family, what are some strategies that you two use to keep it together?
Phew. Well, the biggest thing I always which I guess I'll jump forward a little bit, after a lot of years of marriage, I actually did some marital counseling with folks, and probably the biggest thing that I see is, when people have disagreements, they tend to always wanna talk about the other person and never about their own shortcomings, or never about their own role in 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 the problem, and that's always a difficult thing in counseling, is I'm not talking about her, or I'm not talking
Yeah,
about
yeah,
him. I'm talking to you about what you did here, and I'm talking about you, what set you off, or, or whatever, how you handle it, and people constantly want to overlook. We tend to overlook, and give ourselves grace, and be harder on the other person. And so you got to come to a point where you give give the same grace to the other person you give to yourself.
mm,
And sometimes that's people don't see that. They feel like they're being fair, but they're really not being fair
yeah,
about it. And then, I mean, working out you've got to take the other person into account,
mm,
you know, and that's it. It's when Jesus talked about you loving others, it's it's at the expense of self. He said, "If a man will follow me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Taking up a cross meant something back then that it's kind of lost the meaning today to a
so
lot of
can you give us
people.
some examples of how that worked out in your marriage?
Yeah. So, I was into music since I was 8 years old.
8.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then when I met her, I was playing with some guys in the Air Force. We were doing heavy metal then,
Did you do
and
the big hair? That's the big
yeah,
question.
well, I did a wig because I
Okay,
was in
you
the Air
you did a
Force.
wig, really?
So yeah, I'd
You
put a
did a
wig on.
wig. Okay, I want
Yes,
a picture. I want a picture. I mean, yeah, we gotta have a picture of
Yeah, I've
that.
got one on my phone. I'll send it to
Yeah,
you.
send it to me.
It's a
Show me
bright
people.
orange.
I can't believe you did that. You went in public and
It's
actually
bright
prayed like
orange.
that?
But
Wow.
but anyway, so and getting into
Bright
that,
orange.
doing the things we'd practice a lot, and then of course we'd drink a lot, and we'd do a lot of things,
Yeah.
and it got to a point where we'd had our first child, Chris, and Sonia was getting ready to have another one. And we had gotten a house. We bought a house because base housing was full.
Now you're in, was it South Carolina?
South Carolina,
Okay.
Charleston, South Carolina. Yep. So we'd gotten our house and we had that. And basically I was just out. I was still living like I was by myself
Mm.
when the kids came along, and it got
That's
to
a hard adjustment when you make it that fast too.
yeah. Yeah.
It's like, wait a second.
And so finally, Sonia said, well, I've had enough, you know, and I'm not going to do this on my own. And I'm just going to go back to Kansas City and go to mom's, and you can do whatever you want to do.
Mm.
And that was a point. It's like, wait, this wasn't part of the dream and the
Right.
plan,
Right. Okay.
that's,
So all of a
that
sudden
part
the
wasn't
dream's
in there.
going to the graveyard.
Yeah.
How do you get it? How did you get it out of the graveyard? How did you bring life back into
Well,
your
I
marriage?
remember I was out in the yard and I just looking up at the sky and looking at the stars and just thinking about all this stuff. And I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know the Bible at all at the time, other than, I knew I needed Jesus. That's about all I knew. But looking up at the stars and watching the stars, and I just had like a thought in my head that said, so how's it going doing things your way? And I said, well, not very good.
So we're going to do this another way.
And then another thought said, well, are you ready to do it my way?
Mm.
And what I believe that was is I believe it was the Spirit of God just speaking to me. It wasn't an audible voice or nothing like that.
Right,
It was
right.
more like thoughts.
Right.
And I said, yeah. I said, I think I'm ready. And I remember asking a question when I got started. I said, okay, I'm gonna follow Jesus, see what happens here. And I remember asking, so if I follow you, will you restore my marriage? His answer was not yes or no. His answer was, you need to follow me regardless of what happens to your marriage.
Wow.
And so I thought about that, and
Wow. So where did you get that language? I mean, were you raised in the church?
no,
You
no,
weren't?
I went, I wouldn't say raised in it. I went as a kid. We had some people come by and invite us to church, and we went for a while.
So you had some concept
Some kind of
following
concept.
Jesus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
But then when all this started going on, it became okay. So I would listen to the radio, and it's really funny because I always tell people I felt like I was discipled by radio pastors more than other.
Driving down the road.
Yeah, because I got into driving after I got out of the service, and so a lot of times I was listening to the radio. But what was crazy was it seemed like every statement or question, not statement, but a question that I had, there'd be a message about it within a short amount of time, and be
Wow.
talking about where to go in the Bible. Well, in this one, I'm trying to love my wife, but as I try to love my wife, she's pushing me away and being upset, and I'm just a bad memory to her. And so I was frustrated, and it's like, well, how do I love you? And God sent me to Ephesians 5, which is, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church, gave himself for it. And so I got there, and I said, okay, but how does this
Play out.
how does this apply? How do
Yeah.
I love my wife? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
trying to love her, and every time I try to love her,
Yeah.
she gets mad at me
Yeah.
and
The
pushes
box
me
of
away.
chocolates is not working.
Yeah, or hugs, or
Don't hug me.
yeah, don't touch me, don't touch me. Yes. And so it's like I have no concept, and God directed me to that verse, and he said, what does it say there?
Mm.
It says, okay, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. And I thought on that, well, this thought that comes in and said, well, what did he give himself to? It says he gave himself for it.
Yeah.
What did he give himself to?
Yeah.
He gave himself over to the will of his Father and to death. I was like, okay, so how do I die? And then I started learning the concept of dying to
This is
selfishness.
pretty sophisticated thinking.
Dying to selfishness. And I said, okay, well, how
Wow.
do I die?
All from the truck radio?
How do I die to my wife?
Yeah. So,
And they're talking about Jesus gave up everything.
oh, here we go.
And
Here we go.
I said, okay, so then looking at my life, you know, one of the big divisive parts of it was the music.
You had to give up your orange hair.
Matter of fact, this is pretty wild. This is outside. The orange hair didn't come out very much anyway, but it was kind of a joke. It would be passed around to a bunch of the guys in the band, but because we're all military, so we all got to have short hair too. But anyway, what was really crazy was a lot of the issues were music, and Sonia would get so mad if I even pulled my guitar out. Later on, she'd tell me, she said it was like when every time you'd pull that out, you'd run to that guitar. And to me, it was like you going to a mistress.
You loved it more than her.
Yeah, that's the way she felt about it. And I was just going to it because I couldn't, you know, she wouldn't have anything to do with me. But, and so that's when God said, okay. I said, well, then I'll give up everything for my wife. And so I had probably $25,000 worth of equipment.
Wow. And back then, that's even more than now, right?
And I took it all in an afternoon.
Probably about $50,000 worth of equipment.
I didn't even wait to put it in the paper or nothing. I took it to a pawn shop. Said, here, what do you give me for
Rick, wow.
And so I got rid of it all.
How much did you get for the hair?
The hair went to one of the guys in the band, so I didn't get anything. And it wasn't my hair anyway; it was somebody else brought it in. But
it was orange hair. Probably ended up on Trump.
Yeah. But anyway, so I did that, and then the second thing I did that was wild, because I had heard a guy talking about this too, and there's some verses in Proverbs that talk about who you hang with. And so after I went to the pawn shop, I'd sold everything off. I went up to the band that I was playing with, and I said, hey, guys, just want to let you know I'm out, and I'm not going to be back.
Not hanging out with y'all right now.
And I'm not hanging out with you either. And they're like, oh, you know, we're cool. You got to quit the band, but you can come hang out, you know. And I was like, nope. I said,
because you'll be just sucked into the same.
I said, yeah. I said, I gotta work on my family. I gotta, you know, do what I can to right some
didn't she
wrongs.
Move to Kansas City, so you kind of had to just leave, right? I mean, they were all in South Carolina.
Well, this is before that, though. This was probably a good year out ahead of that.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And it's before us getting out.
Okay. This is before she left South Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was, and she'll tell you that was, and she tells me all the time, that was the big eye opener, that she knew, you know, when people wonder if people really change, she said, when I did that, she knew something had happened.
But then you guys all ended up in Kansas City.
And then when I got out, she was still working on her anger towards me.
Yeah.
The only job I could find that was really suited our needs was a truck driving job, so I took it.
And you drove the gas tank ones, right?
Yeah, later on, not to start. That was a lot later on. But what that did for us is, you know, there's an old saying that says, absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Excuse me, I have no coffee.
And so God in his wisdom, the only thing I could find was truck driving. Well, that kept us apart a lot. And then we'd come together, you know, maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay. So it was like you were dating all over again.
Exactly. And then, you know, things improved. By this time, she had gotten out, so she came back to Kansas City. I transferred the trucking company I was with. I could transfer back to Iowa. They had a headquarters in Des Moines, Iowa, but I could live in Kansas City. And that's where Sonia's mom and dad live. And so she was staying with her mom and dad. And when I'd get into town, that's where I'd go. And then one night there was, I guess, I was just trying to, again, show love. And this is one of those light bulb moments. I was trying to give her a hug about something and she just went nuts. Just get away from me. I can't do this.
Aw.
And so I was frustrated and I took off and went for like a midnight walk. It was snowing. Well, her mom heard it and got up and was talking to her and said, you got to think about what you want and what's going on here. And you have to think about the vows you made and the promises that were said.
Mhm.
And
That's a good mom.
yep. So that helped Sonia see things a little differently. And then while I was out walking, God talks to me and he says, son, I've got a question for you.
That's his God talk.
Yeah. Well,
Son.
it doesn't, it's like, son, I got a question for you. So when is a hug not love?
When you don't want it.
When somebody doesn't want it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And because for me, if you love somebody, you give them a hug.
Give 'em a hug. You like
Huggers.
Hugs. You like hugs.
Yeah. A family of huggers. Everybody
She came up to you. So what did you do?
And so
Find out what her love language was?
yeah, that was part of it, figuring out what made her tick. And then also understanding you can't, especially when you hurt somebody, you can't just up and do what may seem like the
Right.
most innocent acts. You can't do that. You have to get permission.
Right.
Do you mind if I give you a hug?
Right.
Do you mind if I and then, so from there just continued to get better. And then I had to learn, and this is I'm gonna try to say this. When I got into marital counseling, I would say this to people because I had to learn it myself. So I was the guinea pig here. Was somebody was saying, well, I'm mad at her. I'm mad at her because she did this to me.
Okay.
And I'd say, okay, what did you do? Well, I did this.
Yeah.
Oh, so, but you think it was justified that you do that because she did you wrong.
Right.
And yeah, that's it. I said, well, guess what? You handled wrong.
Mm.
And you don't want to talk about, just because somebody wrongs you, that does not give you a blank check.
Right.
To say, now you can do whatever. And so, here's a guy claiming again that he's a disciple of Jesus, following Jesus. And it's like, okay, well, guess what? Jesus shows us how to handle wrong. And, and if you handle wrong.
If you handle wrong.
If you handle wrong.
Be right.
You gotta, you gotta deal, it's like I said at the beginning of this thing, whenever I do this marital counseling, he wants to talk about her, she wants to talk about him. It's like, no, you need to both of you talk about each other. And sometimes I have to split them up and talk to them one-on-one because, you couldn't get past that. But all of that's the stuff I learned, with us is Sonia get upset when I'm trying to show love. So I get upset and be snappy and start a fight. And
now you're playing music. So what happened in that?
So that's another God thing. So to show it's all God, because like I said, I turned to God and he did restore my marriage, even though he didn't tell me he would. He did restore it.
Sonia's pretty amazing.
So so I sold all that stuff. I think it was 1989 or 90, right around there.
Yeah.
And then it was about 1996, 97, I was working with a guy and he had an old Fender guitar. And he said, yeah, I don't play it much anymore. He said, you want to buy it? And he says, I think it was like $175 or something. He was going to sell it to me. I don't even think it was that much, but anyway, I come home and I mentioned something to Sonia about it. And Sonia told me, because I told the guy, I said, I really can't do that. And Sonia is the one that came to me and said, "You need to buy that guitar."
Wow. So
And I was
love
like,
came back.
why do you say that? Because you know what? And she said, because you've changed. And she said, I know.
You love me more than the guitar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you love me more than the guitar. And then she said, that's part of the allure of
Ours was video games.
yeah, when we met. Yeah, when we met.
Which I think is your new one.
Yeah,
no, I'm kidding.
when we had met, she had said that was part of the thing. She remembered me playing and liking
we do
it,
music,
so.
and our spouses both do video games.
Yes, yeah.
So that's kind of.
So anyway, so she's the one, and then and then after that happened, true enough is the saying that Jesus said, "He who finds his life will lose it, but he that loses his life for my sake will find it."
Yeah.
And there's the thing about you give something up and you get it back. And I didn't do it to get music back. I thought music was going.
Well, you didn't know it was going to come back.
And for me, music was dead.
Yeah.
It was not coming back.
Yeah.
I had and not only did it come back, but it came back in the form of playing on praise teams and praising God with it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like
writing songs.
It's almost like the story. Yeah, it's almost like the story of Moses. He takes this staff, throws it down, it becomes a snake.
Yeah.
And then God says, "Pick it up again." It becomes a staff again. And that's what this snake of music.
Yeah.
And music itself is not the snake. It was what I did with it.
Right.
And
So we just hope that you subscribe.
But yeah.
And click the button.
Yep.
And if you are a Patreon member, we're going to have an after show. So goodbye, YouTube, and we'll see you on Patreon next.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Don't let your dreams